Hey guys, now in today's video, I'm going to share with you how you can step up your Super Bowl party with something that looks as amazing as this. Check this out. This is a shot glass that has been engraved with a UV laser for the upcoming Super Bowl. So, in today's video, I'm going to share with you how you can make these. It takes less than 2 minutes to create, and I have to tell you, I'm super excited about this Super Bowl party and how everyone will get one of these. So let's go and check it out. All it takes is under 2 minutes. Now, before going into the process of laser engraving, I wanted to give you some tips about the glass. Take a look at this glass right here for a second. So as you take a look at this, you'll notice that this is not a round shot glass. It's actually kind of like a square whiskey shot glass. And this is going to be true with any kind of glass, not just this one right here. But what you're going to find is that glass will tend to have or lack uniformity. It's not going to be the same on every single side. That could create challenges. So when I did this engraving using the two 5-watt UV lasers that we had, I had to defocus slightly and I defocused downward because I wanted to accommodate or just deal with the fact that the glass isn't going to be uniform. In other words, if you think about the thickness of glass, it's never going to be the same thickness, right? Because glass is glass. So as you take a look at this, you can see that even as you're looking at here, there's different thicknesses, right? As you get to the corners versus the middle. So that can make it a little bit challenging. You also notice that I engraved the bottom of the glass too, which is also really cool. Now I'm going to turn this forward and I'm going to try to give you guys a glimpse of this because it's hard to see, but you'll see it in other pictures that I'll include. So here you could see the glass, and what I ended up doing is defocusing, bringing the actual laser down about 2 millimeters. Tapped it twice because both of these have electric lifts and also declines, and I just moved it a little bit. And I have a focal bead, as well as I'm using our jigs to make sure that I have great alignment and I have the product looking, perfectly for every single one. Now, as you can see here, this turned out to be really, really nice. I'm going to try, it's kind of tricky because I'm trying to get a good angle so that you can see this, but you can see how nice and frosty this actual grave took place. Now, there's a couple things that you can do also. Not only could you, first of all, leave it as it is, but you could also color fill this. So I know a lot of friends who would like to have, let's say, the team colors engraved, filled with each one of the logos that you see there. That's something that you could do. You could also put a white paint on it and fill it with white, like enamel or white acrylic. I've done that as well. So there's a lot of choices that you can go through. I kind of like the way this looks right now. And I think that the finish, you can see, is really, really sharp. And all I literally did is I went online, I found, and modified some graphics, made them SVGs, and then did put this together so that it could look this way, and resized it so it would work on the cup. And then the other thing I highlight is that you'll notice here, I'm not going all the way to the sides because the curvature right here, especially with the 5-watt UV, is going to be difficult to maintain focus, right? So especially when you look at the two at the very top on, the two right next to the football, that was a little tricky. So I had to make sure that I was defocused downward so to make sure that that came out okay. And then when you look at the arrowhead over here in the bottom and the opposite of the eagles, we needed to make sure that it was defocused so that I could make sure I can get the entire arrow because it's so close to a thicker part of the glass, and then that will cause it to defocus. So I am really, really happy with the actual quality. And you'll see what these look like in the thumbnail really, really good because we'll take some good pictures. But these turned out great, and I know my friends are going to be excited to have them. I'm going to show you how I'm engraving these shot glasses for my Super Bowl party using both the Commarker Omni 1 and the Haotian UV lasers. Both of these lasers are 5-watt lasers, but they do an amazing job when it comes to working on glass. Now, I do have our jig system here, and you can see that I have a jig in place, which makes it really easy for me to work with products and engrave, and more importantly, we're really about consistency. So the jigs really allow us to get this consistency. So if I'm doing, let's say 50, 100, they're all going to be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and insert our shot glass jig into place, and I'm going to go ahead and put our shot glass right here. Now, the cool thing about this jig is that it basically levels out your shot glass so that it is level. And then we're also going to be using our focal chain. And the reason why I'm using the focal chain as opposed to using the actual, I would say, uh, dots is that I know that the dots are off and I have things calibrated to the focal chain. I'm going to pull this out for a second because I want to show you something that I'm doing as well. Now, when I'm working with glass, I know that I need to be able to defocus. And defocus is pretty much where you're lowering or raising the laser so that you're not really too far away or too far or spot on the laser. You're actually either going up or going down a little bit. Now, I'll defocus down when it comes to using UV lasers because this glass, as you can see it on the sides, has a curvature to it. So if I defocus upwards, I'm going to be losing power and I'm not going to get a nice engrave. So I'm defocusing downward. I'm actually bringing it down. And I'm defocusing down about, I'll look at this, 2 to 3 beads. So I have a couple beads here in this chain, and I'm just looking at how far down I'm going to be so that I can make sure that I get these corners and I don't lose any of my engraving. And that's why I use these focal chains. And my focal chains are magnetic, so they come off, they connect on the side, and then they're just there for my use. So I'm going to pull it over to the side. Now, I'll do a couple things to confirm my alignment, right? So let's go ahead and push this back into place, right? Now that I'm sure that I have my alignment. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check and see if my what my boundary looks like. So I have a square or a rectangle on my canvas for light burn. And what I'm doing here is I'm confirming that this looks square. So as I look at this, I'm looking at where it's at, and I'm really happy with this. Now, we also have these little preview shields, right? You can see that right there. So that's our preview shield. Let's flip it the other way. Right, so that's our preview shield. And I can actually put this on top as well to see if things look square or not. And it makes it really, really pop. This works both with the Haotian and then also works with the Omni, obviously. So now that I have that and I see it, I'm going to do one more check. And the next check is I have a vertical line that I'll use for alignment as well. I'm going to check and see if that looks like it's straight. And what I'm looking for is how it's coming straight through to make sure that it looks like it's aligned. Now, next step for me is I'm now going to look at the image, right? And I only do this when I'm doing my initial, I would say, alignment, right? So I can see it right there and I can see everything looks good, right? If I put this on top of it, I can see that that looks great. I can also, if I want to, is I can go ahead and actually frame everything individually. And you can see where things are going to go. So I can see where the actual 2 logos go on each side, and I can see how things are looking there, and it looks good. So now I'm pretty square, and everything looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the actual engrave. I'm going to put on my glasses just to make sure we're safe. And I'm also going to turn on my vent so I can pull anything that's being engraved out. And I'm going to hit start. Now let's go ahead and do that. Now you can see clearly the actual image is starting to show up, what we're engraving there. The defocusing that I did seems to have made some benefit, but you'll notice that right where it says SuperBowl, it looks like there is an area that is not engraved. That happens sometimes. So what we're going to be doing is once this runs, we're going to run it a second time to see if we can make up for that little spot right there that is not engraving. All right, so that is the end product. Let's see if we can get that in focus. All right, guys, so that is the end product. We had to run it 2 times in order to get that to actually engrave fully. That happens sometimes. That could happen from glass to glass, right, where you have that. But you can see how great that looks. Now, we did the same thing with the Haotian. So you can see we're in a different kind of laser bed, but we're using the same jig system. So we have a jig system for the Haotian, and then we'll also have it in the same jig slider. And you can see here that I have the alignment there. So this has a red laser, so I'm able to see it, but I can also use my preview pane and I can see that everything looks like it's aligned really nicely. So what we're going to be doing next here is, and I got to do that again, let's go for the top. All right, so now I've done the same thing with the Haotian, different bed, and you can see I'm confirming my alignment. Same jig system, same jig. And what we're going to be doing now is running the engrave now that we've confirmed that the square is where I want it to be and also the vertical line is where I want it to be. You'll notice that this laser has both the
a UV laser frame, and then it also has a red dot laser, which I really like. Now I'm just confirming that the actual graphic itself is well placed, right? I did the same thing. I defocused this as well to make sure that this would engrave well. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and run this engrave. And you can see it's already started. It's not doing really well. And we'll just cut to the end because you'll be here for at least a little bit over a minute. But you can see how nicely this is. Now, I'll say that the Haotian actually engraved with one pass. So that was a difference. So the actual Commarker required 2 passes. The Haotian, actually I think is how you pronounce it, the Haotian actually engraved faster, and it engraved the very first time without having to do 2 passes. They're both 5-watt lasers, but there's a difference in the two. And I want to say also that the Haotian had slightly better quality. So the glass came out, I think, a little bit crispier. And like I mentioned, it was a 1 pass. And you can see how nicely it's going through right here. Same thing, I have the focal chains on this. And for me, again, the ability to be able to engrave multiple items rapidly and do it in consistently, where you have everything aligned the same place. Like if I'm going to be switching and putting 50 or 100 of these, having this jig just makes it super fast. So I'll have links to this jig in the description area, and then all the other accessories that you can pick up. So for those of you who are interested in making these, even if you're doing something for a business, in this case these are all personal, so these are for my home. And again, it just steps up your party. So if you have a Super Bowl party, this is the way to go.
So guys, that wraps up our review. And as we said, aren't these amazing? Absolutely spectacular. See you in the next video.